Hi, my name is Amanda Donovan, and that's something my family can really relate to. I had a dream the other night. I was in one of these gorgeous Beacon Hill townhouses that some of us have had the good fortune of being allowed to look around in. There's an endless number of floors, lots of light flooded through huge colonial-era wavy glass. It was peaceful and serene and spotless. They say that when you dream of a house, the house represents yourself. I was vaguely aware of this as I tore around the grand spiral staircase in a panic, trying to find my way out before the homeowners discovered me, stowaway. I was someplace where I did not belong, terrified, out of my element, heart pounding, and unable to find the exit from a life I did not belong in. I'm a social worker, specializing in the treatment of psychological trauma, and devoted my professional life to advocating for the underdogs. My husband is an economist. We had a very well-paying job that allowed me to stay home with our 2-year-old daughter. We were blessed with privilege, opportunity, and security. Our son was born in January of 2010, and 3 days after he returned to work, my husband's employer walked into his office and told him that he was being laid off. They read from the script. He was downsized. I could try and describe the crushing fear and betrayal that one feels. I could try and describe it, but so many already know firsthand. After the initial shock, we sat down to review our situation, and surprisingly, things were pretty good. My husband had received a reasonably good severance package. We had 6 months of living expenses, unemployment insurance, and no debt. We'd been doing everything we were supposed to do. We'd been very responsible with our money, and we lived modestly. We thought that he could take home some time off to enjoy his 3-week-old baby and 2-year-old daughter after so many weeks of working 80 hours. In many ways, it was such a happy time for our family, and we're so blessed to have had that time together. After a while, things became increasingly scary. We never would have expected it to be so hard to find work again. A year and a half into this ordeal, we had no savings, no more unemployment benefits. What we did have was a mortgage, 2 cars that were no longer roadworthy, student loans gathering interest, and a looming heating bill for our almost 200-year-old house. You start to look around and seeing everything falling apart. Doors are falling off the hinges, all the dinner plates are cracked, and you're drinking out of mason jars because the glasses have all broken. You wonder if you're going to be Miss Havisham or Norma Desmond living in your rotting castle, dreaming of the past. Sometimes the pressure makes your eyes burn, and when you look at your kids, you panic. The future seems less bright every day that goes by, and you feel hope slipping away, and everything becomes a countdown. We're good people. We work hard, save money, and we invest in the market. We give to charity and we volunteer. We bring casseroles to people when they're sick. We've never carried debt aside from student loans and mortgage. We overpay our bills to get ahead and drive used cars. We don't have iPads or even cable. We haven't taken a vacation in years. You wish you could afford to be depressed. You start fantasizing about staying in bed all day, sleep until something good happens. Then the guilt washes over you, reminding you how horrible you are for complaining when you still have a home, and you're upset about not having a reliable car when your children living in refugee camps in the Congo. Depression can be very self-indulgent. This is what the slow motion unraveling looks like. It doesn't matter if you went to a good school or come from a good family. It doesn't even matter if you're in good financial shape with no debt and never even got swindled by a big bank. You could be sitting there with all your ducks in a row, heat turned all the way up to 68 degrees, and before you know it, one little shift in the universe will send you and the people you love most into a tailspin. You'll be compelled to watch as the ground gets closer and closer, and you'll feel yourself being discussed. You know people get uncomfortable when you talk about it, and they start to avoid you. I could no longer recognize my life, and it's a terrifying place for anyone to be. There are a lot of us here right now. At some point, I had to scrape myself up off the floor and start to plan ahead for my family. It took a lot of courage for me to come to the food pantry for help. I was terrified about what the experience would be like, about how people would look at me, what kind of food I would get. I was scared of appearing ungrateful or greedy. I was scared of being judged for being poor, or worse, not poor enough. I received our first pickup and was overwhelmed by the experience. 33 pounds of fresh, healthy food was provided to us by the Open Door Food Pantry in Gloucester and the Greater Boston Food Bank. That food got us through several weeks with some stretching. It was a desperately needed bandage for us at a particularly dark and needy time. One less thing to worry about which is no small gift when you're in a place of constant worry. It was a bit of light shining through a crack. I had been kicked around for so long and had come to expect the poor treatment, shame, judgment, and harsh words that would characterize many of our interactions during this period. I'll never forget the staff's kindness and compassion, because seeking that help was one of the most difficult things I've had to do. What a valuable resource for our community, particularly right now when so many families are struggling more than they ever expected to. If it could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. The Greater Boston Food Bank is not just there for people who live in abject poverty. It's for people in transition who might feel like they don't recognize their life right now. Many of us wake up one day to find ourselves living in a stranger's house, desperately seeking a way back to